Hello everyone, this is Professor Bob and welcome to class. We're going to have a short discussion on functions today. Actually a really short discussion on functions. Not a lot to cover. Most of it was in your reading, so there's really not a lot more to do except just kind of go through a completed function and kind of dissect it a little bit and kind of tell you like the big picture of what's going on. Now the big picture is, let's talk about functions and programming in general. Now, here is what databases are used for. As you know, at this point, is databases are used to store large amounts of data. Now, there's two different types of databases, at least two major kinds. You have SQL databases, which you use SQL statements, right? You use select, updates, and deletes to maintain. And you also have non-SQL databases, or are called NoSQL databases. And we really haven't done much with NoSQL databases, not because that they're not relevant, but they're just different. NoSQL databases are used for different types of applications, like storing things that might not necessarily be textual, like pictures or documents or PDF files. So let's concentrate on the SQL part of it. Now, in SQL, we use SQL statements to get data in and out of SQL databases. But that's not all databases do. Now, we also have quite a bit of database programming. Now, this is something that you'll learn a little bit later in your database career. When you first start learning about databases, you learn how to create a data model, right? You drop tables, you create tables, and there you go. That is your data structure. Your tables are your internal database structure to hold a bunch of data. But databases also can and usually do, almost always do, right, contain programming logic, like processing stuff. So that's what functions are used for in database programming is you use it to do something, right? To perform some sort of action. Now, I know that's vague, but think about functions in any other language, which I'm assuming all of you know. I mean, you write a function, you have parameters so you can pass data into your function does something and passes a value back. Now you got like a really cool reusable piece of code, right? That's what functions do. But I'm assuming you guys kind of already know that. Functions are alive and well in database management systems. In any database management system you could think of. I've alluded to in the past some of the bigger ones. Those are the ones I'm really interested in because I do a lot of what's called enterprise database programming, which means, non-little itty-bitty databases. I mean, databases that whole organizations use to maybe manage their whole customer base. So we're talking hundreds of thousands or even millions of records. So when you have functions, is you have little reusable bits of code or big reusable bits of code that do things. Now, that's where in my opinion, most of the jobs are in database development or databases is the database programming part of it, right? Now, database programming is different than database design because database programming is truly writing code to do something where when you're doing data modeling or, building tables, you're not really programming. You're writing script to do stuff. I mean, you are writing script to build data structures such as tables, but it's not really conditional, is it? It's not like if this value equals this, do something. If not, do something else. And that's what functions allow us to do. Now, functions, again, it's transportable, meaning that this knowledge that you're learning doesn't only go to one database management system. Functions exist everywhere. If you could get them working in Oracle and understand the concept of how they work in Oracle, SQL Server won't be a big jump for you. It'll be maybe a little bit of a different interface. You'll be pecking around a little bit saying, hey, where do I do this? Because the interface is different and the syntax may be different. But, ladies and gentlemen, the say that 10 times fast. The context is the same. Now, with programming, database programming, not only do you got functions, you got all sorts of other objects too. Functions is the jumping off point. It's the gateway, man. It's the gateway to other database programming. And it kind of is because functions are simple. They're easy to understand. They're easy to program. once you do it, you're like, okay, Bob, I did that. Why are we kind of like beating it in the ground? And that's because it's a gateway to other database programming pieces of code, objects, such as procedures, triggers, packages. There's other things as well that we're going to cover, or, well, it's really for a different time. So anyway, that's the concept behind functions, right? So you can build functions in Oracle just like the following. This is a simple function, actually, very simple. All this does is it declares a function, right? And the function, this is what's called the declaration. Now, the declaration has values that you pass into them or out of functions, right? This is called the signature of the function. The signature is what does the function take in as values and what does it return. So the signature of this function is it takes a argument called x, an argument called y. They're input arguments, right? You know that from your reading, and they're numbers. Now remember, like I said before, that the data types that we're using here are Oracle specific because of course they are, So if you're writing this function in other database languages, you just have to know what data type you're using. And also we're returning a value called a number, and there it is there. So our function does something really simple. We have one arithmetic expression. That's it. That's all we do. And we don't even need to have this on one line. Remember, you have your begin and your end block. So all this is saying is we're declaring a variable called z, and we're taking x times y plus x, and we're returning it. So this declares our function. So we would run this in PL SQL or Apex to build this function. This is the code that you see on line 1 to 6 to build the function. So I'm going to skip that part because you already know how to do that. So anyway, this is how you would actually call the function here. And the function here, what we're doing is we just have a PL SQL block that we're declaring two variables, one called A, one called B, and we're passing it into this function for the new salary. There you go. And then we're outputting it, and we just have, I'm just showing what the result is here. Anyway, in general terms, this is declaring the function, and this is actually running it. Now, let me move on a little bit. Functions aren't just for calling in scripts, because you're like, do I call them in scripts? And the answer is yes, you call them in scripts all the time. But you could use functions in other places too. You could use functions, for example, in a SQL statement. Like if a SQL statement is really, really complex in a where clause or in a select clause, you could use a function. And I'll leave you to your own devices to kind of research how to do that. That's something that you could, with that knowledge, you could kind of figure it out. It's one of those. Remember, we demo things so you could learn, but once I think you could get it, I kind of give you the happy path and say, here's what you need to do. Here's what you could use it for. Now off you go on your way. So I'll leave that to you to figure that out, to research how you could use functions in SQL. But that's a big, big, big plus of how you could use functions. So anyway, that's really all I had for you for functions. Again, this was kind of at 30,000 feet because this is the spirit of what I'm doing here is I'm trying to sell you on the bigger picture of functions, the design of functions without going into constructing a function, because you should kind of know what functions do. So I'm just kind of putting it in the context of databases. And then I'll leave it to you to do the nitty gritty of the compiling of this Oracle function, because at this point, you're already using tools such as Apex. So I'm not going to really get into the weeds there, since you probably already know that. But of course, I'm available for any of this. This stuff is cool to me. It's not a job. I've been doing this forever. It is a job, but I really enjoy it. Anyway, that's what I have today for you. Just a short lecture on functions. Thank you for making it this far, and I bid you all a very well rest of the day. Thank you.